we're getting the YouTube one. As soon as we get that up, you're ready. It's up to you. I can do a quick one just so that everybody knows what we're doing now. Good. So this is an EAC meeting of the Township of Newtown. Just so everybody is fully informed, this is one of the first meetings in March that we've gone back to full meetings. So we're not taking comment through Zoom. You can watch it live on YouTube. And so that's there for you. But we're not taking public comment that way. Public comment can be made in person. You can still make public comment by dropping it off at the blue drop box out in front of the building. That has been checked and there was no public comment. And then you can also send it in up through 3 o'clock to publiccomment@newtowntownship.org. Again, that's public comment at newtowntownship.org, and we monitor that up till 3 o'clock before the meeting starts. With that all said, I'll turn it over to Bruce, our chair.
It's March 7th. I'm going to do roll call next. Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney.
Present.
Dane Shoemaker. Here. Cindy Mahalo.
Here.
Janet Travanis.
Here.
Harry Bryant.
Here.
And Steve Neese and Steve Bradley. Joe Pinto. So everybody appears to be here except for Joe Pinto. Next thing I'd like to propose is, or move to, is a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda item 4 is consider approving the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Aye. Okay. I recognize the motions and we should vote on whether we find the agenda acceptable. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All not in favor, say nay. It passes unanimously with 7 ayes.
Would just make note for the record that Joe Pinto just arrived about 8:05
Okay.
at that time of the vote. So
All right.
we're okay.
Item number 5 is consider approving the minutes from our February 7th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
I'll make one comment about the
Pardon me?
one correction, I think, on the previous.
sure.
minutes. It says members present. Board, I'm missing, but board member DeSecco. He or she might have been a previous member. This might be something that's automated. I don't know. That just needs to be corrected.
Oh.
Yeah. I've never noticed it, but it apparently went back pretty far. So we haven't read in minutes. Don't
Everybody
worry.
looks for their name.
That's just a correction there.
Okay, we'll make that change to the minutes. In favor of accepting the minutes as they are, say aye.
Aye.
All against? Minutes approval passes unanimously. Next, we're going to move to agenda item 6, which is new business. And we've got 3 things to talk about briefly, or 3 events that have occurred, and a number of people have attended these events. And I thought we could just do a brief discussion on each of them. The first one is the EAC conference that took place on February 26th. I know Sheila, you went, right?
Yes, and it was a very informative session. It was from 10 a.m. to 4:30 throughout the day. The takeaway from it was, obviously, you can always learn more. I liked really the importance that was put upon the associate members of the EAC. And they really went into depth about how that really could be like a liaison in terms, it's like a volunteer, but you recognize them because, it's important to have your board members, but if we don't have volunteers that are behind us who make these things come into a reality, we're just, talking amongst ourselves. So the associate members, we talked before about having it for the students. We'd like to look into having that, and maybe not necessarily anything where you feel like they have to attend meetings and stuff, but just so that we want to build the inclusion aspect. I think that would really be helpful to us because sometimes we get stuck on that board member and who's not. And really at the end of the day, one of us who could pick up a shovel would help and work. So I would like to make sure that we work on being inclusive.
Sure.
And really looking at that. But the associate, and they also talked about the associate to different tiers. And Janet, we've talked about this before for the students, maybe an associate. But it also was important because it allowed you to maybe bring in different experts, because we all have limited capacity in terms of what our field specialties are. And so having associate members can just dabble in on a project. And I thought it was really important. So it was definitely something that I took away. There was multiple topics discussed, and I also attended the other conferences. So there was a lot of crossover in terms of certain things. They briefly discussed lawn conversion, which I'll go into later. I just thought it was very informative, and I did see some of you on. I just want to see what your thoughts are.
So when it comes to associate members, I think they had mentioned about whether or not your resolution that you have for the township allows associate members. I think we had discussed it once before that we do allow people to come on, like for committees, things like that. So we probably should check our own resolution here in Newtown Square to make sure that we could have associate members.
Yeah, so what I would tell you is that yours is actually passed by ordinance. It's
Okay.
actually a little different than some. And so, but I think we could probably, if I'll have to look back at it to make sure where we stand, but I don't think it currently allows for associate
All right.
members. But it doesn't mean we can't amend the ordinance to be able to do so. We would just have to get the board to take those steps. And so, I mean, I don't think it's complicated. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
If the
Good.
board's willing, I think that's, and when I say the board of supervisors, if they're
Yes.
willing, I think that's a reasonability to do that.
Okay.
And I'll check with our solicitor to find out whether we can do it as simple as a resolution or we have to actually amend the
Maybe
ordinance.
even with that, if we have 2 tiers, let's say an associate is somebody who's been tested and really is involved, and maybe a volunteer would be under that, and they wouldn't necessarily have to have a resolution.
I guess the question really needs to be is what's the role of the associate? And I need, I'm in my initial thought, I'm assuming they're not a voting member,
Not
but
on the
Correct. Correct. Not voting.
and because they're not, I don't know that we need a tier. It's
Right.
just a matter of, I would assume that associate members are more like what we've been talking about, having a school student or somebody like that. And so if that's the case, I think we can, if it requires an addendum to the ordinance, I think it's an easy fix. And I would keep it broad, and that way you're not feeling like you have to go back and you're limited to very certain things. And so I'll talk to our solicitor and look at what's the best way to move forward.
That's
Thank
great.
Can I ask a question though? And Sheila, if you said this, I apologize. I don't understand what the purpose of that would be though. Like, walk me through that as opposed to someone else who just comes and volunteers all the time.
Basically what it looked at is, and this is through EAC, in their experience, in building inclusion and community, you want to make people feel like they're a part of it. And it allows you to go deeper into your volunteers by having somebody who maybe, let's say, is an engineer or environmental engineer, and they have a level of expertise, and they can only, maybe get involved with certain projects with you, or somebody who is just willing to plant trees. And it was just building your community based, other than just being about the executive board here and making decisions from the township. And it was a way to, and John, you can jump in if you feel, it was more so about recognizing the importance of all of us working together and making sure everyone feels valuable and a part of it, and being more inclusive was, I think, the biggest takeaway. They also felt it was important because they were able to tap into like watershed experts who were able to come in, and maybe it just was a positive experience. And again, I don't think we want to get into anything political. It's not something, that you're trying to give somebody a position into. It's more so, if somebody wants to help and work out, we want to give them a place under the tent.
Like an advisor.
Yeah.
If they
So-
have the expertise.
If I can piggyback on Leonard's question, I was kind of wondering some of the same things, which is what level of formality would this be? For example, if someone, what makes someone an associate member? Is their name listed like on the website,
No,
like
it
underneath
basically was-
members?
and really it was going back to what your ordinances will provide. They were talking about people that have been tested, that were with you for years, or maybe involved in rain garden projects or something that were, or maybe previous members, or maybe members who had to step off the board and because they couldn't serve everything. So it was a way of keeping them inclusion. It also allowed that person to be able to go on behalf of the EAC and discuss things, and nothing where they would be doing anything about bidding on the behalf of the business. But it was more so about really, and we can go into particulars. I can even bring in the associate discretion. Terrific has done that, and they went into all the particulars. They found that it was really a positive experience for them. They used to be able to get, 15, 20, now they're getting 50 volunteers because they're just broadening their reach. And I think also it would be nice to maybe, let's say, encourage volunteers we do have volunteers that come out and step up for any of our plantings and things of that nature. But it was more so for a member who has really been committed to this and wants to be a part of it. So I thought it was a positive experience, and it really would be helpful. And the EAC went into all the benefits, and we can, I can share that too, if anyone has any other questions.
Another benefit is many people don't know the EAC exists in our township, and it's a way to give greater visibility to our organization. So the associates might tell a friend, we might communicate to the associates so they've got information about activities that we're up to. So, and then the second part, of course, is the experience you talked about. If we can bring additional experience in as a speaker or as a guest, that would be to the advantage of the township and to all of us, I think.
Right. And not everybody can, be coming to every month's meeting and taking advantage, or maybe not want to be a part of
Yeah.
it.
That's a good point, because if, it gives people the ability to join us for what we do and not have to put the commitment in
Right.
to be here every week.
And again, they're not
Right,
involved in
right.
any ordinances. They're not involved in any of the business of the
Sure.
EAC. Their job is really more of a supporting role. And it was more about making them feel inclusive and a part of it, so that we build upon success, and that there's always, a legacy for someone, because any one of us could step off, or so. I think the more the merrier.
Make a point of perhaps sending the sending our agenda out to these associates. So the facilitator help them make decisions as to whether something's interesting.
Yep.
That they're willing to attend or watch via Zoom.
Yep.
I'd be curious to see, Sheila, if you can send me the different one, because I hear what everyone's saying, and I'm not trying to be terse when I say this, but it just sounds like it sounds like the draw is to give someone a title. Like it's kind of like give everyone a trophy sort of thing. And I don't see how, like I said, I'd be curious to see the different one. and really see how it benefited them. Because I don't really see the difference, quite frankly. Like if someone really wants the title to say that they're an associate to volunteer, as opposed to someone who's just going to volunteer because they might not be on the board, but they have time to do it. I'm not following the logic here. And
I can send you the information on it because Trevian did an excellent job in talking about it. But like you said, it's not for somebody who just wants a title, because this isn't about getting a title in your resume. This is for somebody who's proven themselves. They're interested in it. They're committed to the process. And maybe for those individuals that want a title, or maybe, you know, they just could be comfortable with a volunteer. But it would be something for us to consider. And I thought the EAC conference mentioned it's a positive way for us to really expand our scope. So I'll send you the Trevian where we could talk about it. But I don't think in any way it's about, you know, somebody just getting a title. This is something that they would have to be accepted by, I guess, we could even have the supervisors selected, or somebody, you know, if they're just trying to get, this is really about somebody having a place and feeling part of the organization and part of what we're trying to do, make things better.
Bruce, I've been attending these meetings for 3 or 4 years, and I can't recall any circumstance where anybody wandered through this room.
Yep.
Who I felt the slightest need to suggest there be an associate member of the EAC.
Mhm.
I mean, I gotta say I'm with Leonard on this. The fact is, the ordinance says nothing. The code says nothing.
The code says nothing.
We're all appointed by the supervisors.
Right.
Is it the thought being that the EAC could appoint these associate members? I don't see it myself personally. I mean, I do believe it would be desirable to have some liaisons from the high school EACs, because I attended the annual meeting of the Darby Creek Valley Association, maybe many of you did, and they had speakers from the different Easttown, Marple Newtown, and Radnor, all very articulate, well-spoken kids. And they're doing interesting things, and they have a following. And I think it would be great if we could hook in with some of those. But I myself think we're getting all wrapped up in labels if we, I don't see the need for it. And I don't think today we have the power to confer it on anybody. And if I'm listening carefully to the chair of the Board of Supervisors, he's not enthusiastic to give us that power. And I don't, that's just my view. I mean, I didn't hear the pitch, but has anybody seen a putative associate member yet?
Yeah, no, I have to say, Sheila, I totally agree with the concept, and you've clearly explained the potential benefits, but I would like to see the different Easttown documents also after the meeting, because I also am questioning what is the mechanisms, are the mechanisms by which you would recognize these people. And I just threw out the title and putting the name on the website because that's the first thing that came to my mind. So I was wondering, not that we have time to discuss it now, but how do you make these people feel more welcome? I would like to hear what they did. And I agree with Harry. I'm sitting here thinking, who would these people be? I can't think of any offhand. You know, we've had a number of volunteers come out and help with things, but not a lot of names come to my mind right now. So, you know, other than the high school students, I love the high school.
That was
because
Yeah.
the high
And the
school,
main thing was,
it up.
you know, the high school students were a part of it as well. So it's definitely something just to consider. I think the takeaway here is we really need to be able to reach out to the community and get support to do a lot of these things. Because it's wonderful for us to speak about these things in the room, but we're really not effective unless we can really, you know, expand our reach. And that's how volunteers can do it. So, you know, whatever, I don't think anyone needs, you know, to have any type of, I'm just saying whatever we can do to build inclusion and make people feel a part of it and welcoming and encourage people. I think it would be great for somebody to come up here and say, hey, this is going on in this township and what are you going to do about it? And that would be inspiring for all of us.
Let me propose that we take a look at the different stuff, come back a little more organized about to have a discussion and make a decision as to whether to go forward or not. And if we do go forward, how would we go forward and in what form? So I'll propose that we do that at our April meeting.
Right, and check on the ordinance. in the meantime.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that even like, I know, I can tell you right now, I don't think it's in the ordinance, so
I
that
can tell
I'll
you right
check.
now, I just read it. It's not
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you just read it, then it's not there. And I'm like, I was 98%, but I, every once in a while I miss something when I read lots of different things, but I initially was thinking you were talking about students.
That's
And
where I was.
and so that part we've been talking about for a fairly long time.
Mhm.
Yes, right.
And if that's what you're going to present, again, everything from here would go to the board of supervisors
Sure.
for approval and then on. So, I think if you're going to do something different than students, you would need to come up with a plan, come up with
Okay.
a presentation and do that. I don't know that we need to, I would not involve the solicitor at this point
Sure.
for that. The student piece, I would just have him review and just say, yes, I think we need to make an adjustment, or that it's broad enough that having student associates is covered.
Mhm.
And so we'll look at that, and then that way we could take it back to the board for approval one way or the other.
And I think the underlying goal is community outreach, right? And I think that is probably being addressed by a number of the things that we'll probably get into today, right? Through the schools, through businesses, through education stuff, right? So.
Well, I think at our next meeting, we should come back. I think there's clearly benefits to the broad definition you gave to associates.
Right.
We should come back with, what are we trying to get? What are those benefits? And whether an associate member or friend of the EAC or something like that is the best form to use.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to say about the subject? And you covered the watershed and forestry.
Actually, that was a 2-day seminar.
Uh-huh.
And that was incredible. There were some, they went into aspects, and I attended the social media communications one, the volunteer engagement through tree planting session, the conversations around Londonderry Township project, which they did a lawn conversion through the township. And I'd like us to really look into discussing that at next month's meeting for lawn conversion. Well, we can talk specifically about what Londonderry did and maybe look at some of the other aspects about lawn conversion and things that we might have to look into from the township with the ordinances about if you were to convert your lawn, what would the grass level and all that something. So we have to really kind of talk about that next month and prepare for that, but it would be something. I also looked at the DCNR secretary was on the call and she gave a great overview. There was a session on ID and management of invasive plants, and that was really exciting. And they went into then the business of lawn conversion, and they had different landscape contractors who would kind of gone through it and showed really how we need to be able to get that message out to those. Most important thing that came out of that conference was that DCNR issued their C2P2 grants. That was starting March 3rd, and it's till April, I think, the 6th. There was 2 or 3 grants in there that the township really should look into. It's the riparian buffers, but I thought it would be important to kind of coordinate with the township to see what their thoughts are, because they might have some other irons in the fire for other project that we don't know about. But also, there was also grants that we could look into for trails. But Steve, has anyone from the township or any of the other committees talked about the grants? Because we have a limited window.
We've been talking about several grants, and right now, I'll be honest, we're kind of focused on directing. We just did one grant for the historic covered bridge. So we've actually done that a couple times and not gotten it, but we've worked with Willistown this time and we're hoping to get it. But we're also looking at a grant to help repair a bridge that we had to close down. So that's kind of been our focus right now.
Mhm.
I know that there's been a couple other things, and we have a couple grants in the works that we've actually received, and we're working through that process. So not saying we shouldn't go for something. I'm just saying right now our focus has been a little bit different, but, you know, if we're going to do trails, I would need to take it to the Trails and Greenways
Right.
Committee. The riparian buffer probably could come out of this group.
Okay,
If that's something that you're interested. We just would need a targeted location.
and actually the Greer Park, and
Yeah.
it just, and I did mention this at Parks meeting last week. There are some elements that have already been paid out of DCNR with their Greer Parks grants.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to make sure that this would be outside of the scope of that grant that was already given.
Sure.
But I'll send that to you,
Yeah,
Bruce.
do
And
that.
the reason I just wanted to bring it up at the meeting, so that way we're all aware about it, and also that we're not, you know, taking opportunities away from the township if they're looking at other grants, so we're competing amongst ourselves.
Sure.
So,
Can I follow up on that, Sheila? The C2P2 grants about the riparian buffer, the first thing that comes to my mind is wondering what's going on with the MS4 and the township's progress towards meeting its deadline. I know it's about 5 years to achieve those, and I think we're already 1 year in.
Well,
So-
we're in year one right
We're in
now.
year
It didn't
one.
get approved until late last year in 2021. So we're in year one right now. Where I would say we are is, you know, we're looking at Greer Park as part of that solution and looking at that. So that is one of the pieces we're looking at. I think that in addition to that, we've got several things going on with trees that we're doing. I know George just ordered 250 trees. And then PICO is going to do a tree giveaway here in Delaware County, but they're going to do it from Newtown Square. And so we're going to have a good opportunity to encourage folks to participate in that. We'll finalize the date. I think it's coming up in April. And so it's something that we're finalizing, and hopefully we'll have, you know, good success with.
Where is
getting-
George going to put 250 trees?
Where? Right now, he's going to put them in the nursery, but we do know that, which means that we'll probably be planting somewhere around 15 to 30. I forget how many are in the nursery right now out, but we know we need to reforest the Goshen Trail in regards that there's a lot of trees that we have to take out and replace. And in addition to that, he and I have been talking about a couple other areas of township property that we may be looking at, that we would be presenting to the tree commission. So
So Steve, that's very encouraging about the trees, and it's good to know that the township is kind of killing two birds with one stone in terms of the Greer Park. Not only the park being revitalized, but the fact that MS4 mandates would be achieved through that as well. But as I recall reading the plan was, I think, about $1 million. And a lot of that was engineering of doing stream bank restoration, which is very costly and labor intensive. And I remember the advice I heard from a township engineer who I admired. And he said the most cost-effective way of achieving your stormwater goals is to, whenever you're doing something else in the township anyway, you know, work stormwater management into that. So when I think about the cost that this is going to, the MS4 achievement is going to be to the township, I'm wondering why would we not try to use the C2P2 grant to cover some of that? And the last point I'll make is Eileen, the engineers, told me a couple times that the reason tree planting was not in the original MS4 plan was because she was not enthusiastic about it, because the points or the value you get for tree planting is very low,
Right.
especially when it doesn't require or involve removal of impervious surface, which none of these trees were. So I love the idea of tree planting myself, and I'm all for it,
Yep.
but I don't think it's going to help much.
No,
MS4. So that brings me back to, has the engineer looked at the C2P2 grants? And is there a way that that can be used to help the township achieve MS4? And if so, I'm willing to help, write the grants. I know you've got these 2 other bridge ones going on, but we've got a lot to do, a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of money. And to me, this is an opportunity that we should make sure we don't let pass by.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying I need to figure out how it fits with the Greer Park, if it can, because that's been the target area.
Well, but what about Brookside Park? I know
Well,
that
and
was
that's-
targeted for stream bank restoration, and also I think there were stretches, adjacent to Drexel Lodge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just don't know which ones we're aiming for right now. And so I just have to work through that, but yes.
Well, I can, do you have the link? I know you have that, Cindy, the link for the grants that they have, but remember the deadline is April 6th. So we
Right.
have 3.5 weeks to get this done.
Well, the other aspect is they're 50% match. So
Right.
what we need before we put any effort into it is to put forward the notion in front of the board so that they have an awareness of the potential for 50% match on what the grant would be.
I would think they've already got money in the budget
Mhm.
to deal with MS4 because they know it's coming
Mhm.
down the pipe.
Yeah. Steve, in your opinion, is that what you'd suggest as the next step, is to maybe target an area, identify potential areas?
Yeah, I think the first thing is go back to Eileen's MS4 plan and say, what would be an area that we would target with this C2P2
Mhm.
money? And then that would be the first step,
Okay.
because until, what
does
we
that
don't want to.
abbreviation mean? What is it?
It's just, I don't know.
Community partnership.
Yeah.
Oh.
Community collaboration, and it's 2 Cs and 2 Ps, and that's why they call it
Yeah.
C2P2.
It's just an acronym the state uses. Yeah, 2 Cs and 2 Ps, right?
They do, just like MS4, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
4 S's.
It's all about the acronyms,
Mhm.
which nobody understands, and welcome to government. But so the first thing I would need to do is sit down with Eileen, figure out which areas that we set up to target, because if we act outside of that, we have to redo our plan. And that doesn't make sense just because it takes forever to get the approvals. And so let me talk to her and I'll look at that, and then we can look at what would make sense. And it may be that Brookside is the first place to look, because I do believe we were looking at that whole stretch
Yeah.
of Fox's Run. And, it may be a good opportunity.
I already
If
mentioned
could
it
just
at the-
Chime in about if I could just chime in about the value of long-range planning. I mean, why are we being caught off guard on this? C2P2 comes up every single year.
Mhm.
We know MS4 is out there. We should have a 5-year plan. And to me, this is something Eileen or the engineering firm should do, because we're not the engineers. We don't know how to do that. But this should already be all mapped out. I mean, this is a big effort. It's a lot of money. It's a long range. These grants come up every year. We shouldn't be caught off guard like this.
We did mention about this grant at Parks and Rec meeting on Thursday. And I guess Wade was, encouraging to reach out to you. And again, I wanted to make sure he was aware of it and Parks Board was aware of it, because if it's relating to a parks issue, that they are aware of it, so they can also talk with you. But at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure the township, because I don't know what other issues you might have. And it's definitely something to look in, but it also goes back to a point we discussed before about a grant writer. And it would be something to have, somebody that would be able to partake in these events throughout the years. These are standard time intervals every year. And we're not, like Sandy said, we shouldn't be caught off guard. It would be important to have a grant writer, because it's a full-time, it's a big commitment. And there is a lot of money, $50,000 Haverford Township got out.
Yeah, and that just, I'm glad you mentioned about the grant writer, because if you had this person and they had an ongoing relationship with the township, this could be one of their responsibilities, is to kind of stay in touch with the different committees, stay in touch with the engineer, and map this out for years ahead of time. There is so much money out there.
In Londonderry, we'll discuss it next month. I'll go through the conversion. They brought on an MS4 specialist, and it's not an engineer. And her job was to incorporate both the grants as well as the project oversee and the project management. And that would really be something for us to consider. And it wasn't the level, they were not environmental engineers or any type of engineering, but they were more so involved from an environmental perspective, accomplishing the goals of the MS4 plan in a practical way. And what was interesting is they didn't just stay within the concentrations of the township's business. After they accomplished those goals, they went out and figured out how they could provide it to other areas of the community, such as golf courses and residents. And it was really exciting stuff. So we'll discuss that next month, and I'll give you the brief outline of Londonderry and what they did. And that's
Okay.
Londonderry Township in Pennsylvania.
Well, in addition to the 50% match, the other part is doing, at least for our team that's not experienced at doing that many grants, it's a significant effort, the proposal. Secondly, once you get the grant, it's a significant effort to manage and administer the grant. So we can't leave that unaddressed, that effort on both pieces. Sounds like grants should be added to next
Year's budget, absolutely. Leonard, did you hear that?
He had to step off
Okay,
for 6
but
o'clock.
yeah, that would be something to consider. We
Yeah.
should put that on our agenda to vote.
Okay.
But that would be, we've talked about that before. We are missing so many opportunities.
And there
Right,
isn't a
no
grant
study.
writer for the township?
No, we do not have a grant writer
No.
at this time.
Radnor gets money however, you should see what they get.
Thousands of
Yeah.
dollars.
I think Radnor got like $1.9 million for their trail network. Incredible. So anyway, being a conclusion to that discussion, and we're going to put that on
Okay, yep.
next month's calendar. And we're moved to item 6.3, which is our new Birdtown ordinance.
New Birdtown ordinance, may I hold up the Birdtown sign?
Yay!
The new Birdtown sign. And thank the supervisors on Monday evening for passing the new resolution, which recognizes Birdtown, Pennsylvania as our Birdtown sponsor now. And if you click on the QR code on the back of the Birdtown bookmark that the EAC sponsored the production of these. So we will have these available at table events and wherever it is we're talking about sustainable practices here in the township. I think I'll reiterate by saying anyone who comes into Newtown Township and sees the Birdtown sign knows that we support birds and obviously the habitats that they need. So this is a great way of getting a message out that we care about our environment. You know, I don't know how many people go to our website and see the Birdtown sign now under the EAC tab, but thanks to Steve, he's put it there already. So, and then there's a link where you can click on that. It will go to the Birdtown website as well. So we look forward this summer, well, starting this spring now, to supporting many efforts which actually help us to maintain our certification as a bird town.
I think Birdtown and Tree City both kind of increase the cachet of the township. They demonstrate that we're thinking ahead, we're considering more things than big buildings. And I think it adds the cachet and really adds value to the community, those recognitions.
If I could just second that, Janet, I thought you did a wonderful job.
thank
You
you.
were very articulate, very poised and professional. Great
I
presentation.
spent a long time deciding what I could say and not too much.
No,
Did
well
a
done.
good job.
Very well
Good job,
prepared. And to echo what Bruce said about Birdtown certification lending cachet to a community. Mike and I did spend a month in Florida, and we were at a particular community for a month, and while we were there, we grilled, it was our first time there, we grilled every resident. Why do you like this place? Well, what's so special about this? And several of them mentioned the fact that it was an Audubon certified golf course was in the community, which Audubon, not part of the Audubon Society, but they use the name. But they have an internationally recognized program of environmental practices that golf courses can use and by how they manage their property. And you could see it when I walked the property. It was beautiful and there were birds everywhere.
Which
And
property was this?
it was a community in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Well, probably all through
No,
Florida.
no, because I was in other communities the previous year, and you could see the difference in how the bodies of water were maintained. Like, were they a ditch that had water in them? In a lot of communities, it's just a ditch that has water in it, and other places there's, vegetation around the edge and different levels of wetlands and things like that, and practices and use of herbicides and pesticides and things like that. So I think it does make a difference. People there, my point is, people in that community were aware of it, and it's. So if I could add one more thing, there were a lot of events this past month, and it's not on the agenda, but there was the Western Suburbs Trails Summit, which I kind of was Zoom, so I kind of watched most of it.
Or did you see?
Yes, I did. Our very own Leonard was on there with, I forget who was with him,
Somebody from
Vice
the committee.
Chair.
from
but,
the
yeah.
trails.
Yeah.
And it was great that they were there, that they could speak to what was going on here. And the noteworthy thing to me about this year's summit is, you and I, several of us have attended these events over the years. And what I noticed this year was the seniority of the people who were there. We had Leonard, who is the chair of the Board of Supervisors. Lisa Borowski, who is, I forget her title, she's like a supervisor.
No,
Commissioner.
Chair, vice chair. of-
Whatever.
She's a
Trail-
commissioner.
Trails.
Commissioners in Radnor Township.
Oh.
Yes, she's a commissioner at Radnor Township, so she's kind of like Leonard's peer in Radnor. She was there. There was another municipal elected official from a third township, I forget who. And there was someone there from the Delaware County Council. Ooh, and in previous meetings, I do not think we had people of this level of seniority. So to me, trails are catching on. Elected officials want FaceTime about this, and they're proud and they're excited of what's going on in their communities. And there is, every year I see more and more momentum. So I think it's great that Newtown is on board with this and moving ahead.
So one other thing about Birdtown, in our latest spring issue, I wrote the article on going native, and it does mention Birdtown here. And you can click on these websites here to help you with what plants you want to use. So it should be very easy for people. And now, especially with the weather changing, people hopefully are getting into putting in their gardens.
Just comment on the newsletter. I think it's great.
Thank
It's
you.
different than the old way we used to
I
do it.
loved it. And I think you got, and we're gonna do 4 a year.
Yes, that's the goal. 4 a year.
Is that a smart goal or just a goal?
Well, I hope it's a smart goal.
No, really, I think this is wonderful because although much of this information may have, or level of information may have been in the magazine, it really stands out when it's a separate document. And this is a vehicle for us if we know, are you going to put out sort of a publication deadline date to the various bodies?
We'll need to
There is
do that.
that,
Yes,
yes.
we're working on one right now. I think
I
it's
think
actually
Steve said
next week, isn't it?
15.
March 14th.
15th.
15th.
So, yeah, we're working through that.
Well, I love getting it.
Good.
I compliment everybody who had anything
It's
to do with it.
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Steve is running kind of hard on that, making sure we're staying focused, getting it done on time and all of that good stuff. But yes, that's the reason why we're doing this one. I would mention that the magazine has left town. They're no longer providing the service in the
community.
area in community. And so we're trying to find a replacement right now because we really believe that it's important to not just be 4 times a year, but probably closer to 8. And so, one of the things that I know is, going back to the one marketing class I think I took in college was, you got to have something in front of somebody about 7 times before they remember it.
Oh, right.
And so that's the one thing that always sticks in my head. I don't know if I learned anything else in that class, but that's the one thing that I
That's a good
remember.
one, didn't it?
And,
Well, there's so many people in our township that don't really have much interaction with township government. And
Right.
they hardly know what you folks are doing. And
yep.
this is tremendously important and good. So I just,
Well, thank you. And that's the goal. I mean, we want to have that communication on a regular basis.
I agree. I think it's great. And I'm just thinking ahead to a point of contact that I think we're having the farmers market again this year.
Yes.
And to me, that is a great step towards community building and communication. So I'm just wondering if you'd want to have like supplies of these there to hand out.
We've had supplies in the past of the In Community magazine. We would do the same with these and have them there.
Any other, new project or new business things, or we can move on to the old business that we really didn't reach closure on before. The first one is Sheila had asked me to find out which day we're going to pick for that Arbor Day event, and I never heard a response.
I did actually have a Zoom call with Trish Adams, and she's
Okay.
now the new chair of the Trees Commission. And they're inundated with so much, they're really trying to structure the organization and they have a lot going on. And I had offered our help from EAC myself, and I told her, I explained to her what we had done in the past, gave her an overview, how we've done these phenomenal events throughout the years. And I explained during COVID how we scaled them back. So we would be able to do whatever they wanted to do in whatever form, and we would support that. I also encouraged her for us to reach out to Parks and Rec and all the other communities, Newtown Square and Bloom, because it's important that we work together and build community again. So they themselves are not meeting till March 10th. So they're not able to even make a decision on what that will be. I know Trish was going to reach out to George from Public Works, and she has, just to get an outline. I understand they might be scaling back, but I can't speak on what they will do because they have to decide what they will do on this Thursday evening. Trish did invite me to attend her meeting on Zoom if necessary. I'm not able to do so, but I'm hoping that we hear back from them. And I told her that EAC would be wholehearted, willing to do whatever they want to do to make this a success. So we'll wait to see. But I was kind of a little sad if we do lose the momentum that we've built, because I mean, we've had some phenomenal, Arbor Day events, guys. And it was, I can't, we've had 60, 70 people there. It was just always a thing. And I'd hate to lose that.
Trish had reached out to me at the same time, and I don't know why I didn't get included when you had your Zoom call.
Yeah, and
But I never, so I sent her, I went through my Arbor Day records and sent her some key documents, checklists and things like that, and schedules to help her with the planning. I never did hear back from her, but I believe I'm the liaison assigned to the Shade Tree Commission or whatever commission. So I will attend their meeting on Thursday night.
Well, the other thing, having watched you work on this before, supporting this is not the day of. There's a lot of activity that has to happen in advance. And if they're only making decisions very shortly, they're gonna have to hustle on a number of items. I'm not sure if you
Oh, yeah.
provided a things to do list for them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, they had the advantage because they didn't have to work around PHS as a deadline because they already have the trees in the nursery, they thought. So they weren't usually, like, we would have to have the April 19th or the 21st was the deadline for pickup and all that stuff. So They're gonna you'll be on the call, you'll hear everything in the loop, and we have to respect the fact that it's their project now. We will support them.
Sure.
It's their baby, and they'll, we'll do whatever we can to help them be successful.
The other thing about Arbor Day is it's also a requirement for Tree City. Some form of a event has to be held on Arbor Day. So in order to be recertified in 2023,
They are aware of that, yeah.
we've got to do this in the right way. Janet, 7.2 has to do with high school, and that's basically mostly your stuff.
Yes, yes. Well, you and I started the conversation with the high school environmental club. And so part of this printing on tree plenish, I know trees are not blue, but when your printer is not working very well, you get a blue tree. But the tree plenish program is well underway. I've been in touch with Beth, who's the president of the club, and she has sent out this flyer, which I've now sent to each of you all so that you can downprint it or download it perhaps on a printer that's a little better than this. So at this point, it's been posted on the website, thanks to Steve. It's been posted on our Facebook page, Township's Facebook page, on Newtown Square in Bloom, and also with Janet's help, it's now on Marple Newtown Patch. So it's getting around. I think we are broadcasting it a lot further than the high school expected it to happen. I contacted Beth this morning to see how the sales are going. They hope to have 125 saplings that they sell, and they are already at 69. So I think they're halfway there. It closes March 24th, so they have time. And if you have maybe a church or some other organization where you could post it or send it out, I'm sure they would be thrilled to go over their expected goal.
Sure.
So I'll keep checking on them. And I think that we've established a really nice relationship with the environmental club. So we will continue that. We'll see how we can support them. And even if they're not associate members, I will invite them to come in at some point and talk to us about what their interests are.
How about next month?
Sounds like we have a lot for next.
Yes.
Be a 3-hour meeting next time.
Right, but thank you all for supporting this also. I've ordered 6 myself.
If we bought more trees than we can use, they have places to plant them.
Well, I don't know. They at one point said that they would plant for us, but that was before COVID. And so, they'll just distribute the plants that we have ordered. I mean, I don't expect these saplings to be very tall
Yeah,
for $5, right?
this big.
We can hope that they become giants.
Sure. And you had provided a recommendation as to what trees they should
I
be
did.
promoting?
She gave me a list of different choices, which were all fairly good considering the tree plenish research, what trees are good for a particular area. And so she wanted something that was tall, something that was medium sized. And so the red bud certainly is iconic for this area. So that was the medium sized. The oak tree, you can only plant one tree. Doug Ptolemy will tell you it should be an oak tree because it supports so many different pollinators. And finally, I suggested the paper birch because it has such a nice white trunk that's really nice to look at it even in the winter.
I'm wondering this, Steve, when you ask me for articles for the newsletter, does that necessarily mean we've got to write something, or would, a quarter page of something like this be acceptable to
Yeah,
put
a
in
quarter
there?
page of something like that would be acceptable. The challenge for this is that even though the 15th is the due date,
Yeah.
it doesn't come out until May.
Exactly.
And that's one of the challenges with this particular company that we're
Mhm.
using. Their lead time is really long.
Yeah,
And so we have to know things 2.5 months in advance
right,
in order to really put it into an article that's current,
right.
unless we're doing kind of something almost like writing on it that it's already happened,
Mhm.
which is a challenge when it hasn't happened yet, because you
Right.
don't know what you're writing on, right? And so,
Especially 'cause of
but,
COVID.
you know, you don't know how you want to write that and see which way we want to spin it. But, I mean, we're looking at that one, that's one thing that we're looking at from our side about how to evaluate going forward with this. And that's probably one of the reasons why we're saying we also need this additional news output of some sort
Sure.
that we're going to get,
Mhm.
because we need something hopefully that's a little bit more current in that.
So the deadline for this issue was, it's the 14th, is that what I remember?
I think it is the 14th of
Does that mean the
March.
next deadline will be about June 14th or so? If we're doing it quarterly?
July.
Yeah, actually, I do think it is probably about June 4th.
Okay, and that would come out in the August time?
I think that's correct. I'd have to look back.
Okay.
We can get you the list. We know what the dates are.
Okay,
And we're more set than we have been.
sure.
And so they've been able to get enough advertising to make it work.
Uh-huh.
And so we're in much better shape now.
Mhm.
Because we were actually, this one we initially paid for, they actually sent us the money back
Mhm.
because they've gotten enough advertising going forward.
Wonderful.
So Steve, is there still space for an EAC?
Yeah.
Okay.
You just have to think about the fact that when it goes in the boxes, I think it's this first week in May.
So it'll be the summer, it'll
6th.
be the summer issue.
So it's going to be May 6th that it goes in the box. And then if you think about, that, you have to think about what we're getting information in on.
I do think it's a great opportunity for the EAC to get
Well-
further exposure.
We want hopefully in every issue, even if, even if it's just a quarter page for different ones of our organizations, maybe just an eighth of a page, because we got a lot of organizations going now. I'm having to balance all of that's going on in that way, but that's what we want. We want that exposure so people know what's going on in all the different places.
Well, something that we could do is do an article about the rain gardens and about the tree planting there. Just note that they happened and that by then they'll be blooming and just encourage, remind
Sure.
people that they're here and they could come and stop by. And,
Sure.
if you're open for that, I could put something together.
Yeah,
So
and,
there
and
is
the goal, obviously. I mean, obviously, the goal is to make sure that, we think about the rain gardens, the big key is to make sure people are doing it in their own yards, right?
Sure.
I mean,
Yep.
that's when we
Yeah.
really win,
Mhm.
not just that we have one in front of the township building or,
We can make
up
that
on the hill,
count.
but
Yeah.
Come learn, come see and learn and.
Yep.
teach yourself.
We got off on the publication. 7.3 is, last meeting, we discussed the objectives and goals and activities that we want to accomplish in the coming year. And I think there was my fault, but there's a degree of misunderstanding of what we're trying to accomplish, I think. We've got objectives, and I think we all know what they are: community engagement and advice to the township, but they're kind of unmeasurable. And as Steve mentioned, goals are more measurable. The problem is, it's easy to say we're going to do a bird walk. I mean, it's not easy, but it's a check off. We did the bird walk, it's done. We did Arbor Day, it's done. What's difficult is in our advising role, what's the metric to demonstrate that we've been successful in advising the various boards?
So I think that there's a couple things. And so, I mean, your main goal is to advise the board of supervisors,
Right.
correct?
Mhm.
And, I understand you want to work with the other committees and, help them as in their role of advising the board of supervisors.
Sure.
And that's great. I think that the piece that if you're really looking at, when when I'm thinking about what your goal is, what your focus is, like, last year, I would have argued, obviously putting in the rain garden and the planting across the street was part of what you guys were aimed at doing
Right.
as the event, right? So that's pretty straightforward.
Right.
If you might have a goal that would be to review every land development plan that comes before the township and be able to make a recommendation of, something that would improve that plan.
Sure.
And, arguably that is measurable in that you can look at the end of the year, and if we had 5 plans that came before the township for land development, and you reviewed that, and you gave a suggestion of an improvement that would help the environment, help, stormwater, whatever your focus. I mean, and I'm careful because I believe that when we improve stormwater, we obviously improve our environment.
Sure.
But, however we do that, it might be very like that without being so specific that it says we're going to do 10, because you don't know whether we're going to have 5 land development plans or whether we're going to have 20, right? But the fact is, if you say we want to make sure that we review every one and that we do it as a committee and do that, then that becomes your goal. The other thing might be that, you pick something that you're going to present. It doesn't necessarily mean it happens.
Right.
So let's say, and I'm purposely trying to pick something a little bit wacky on purpose, just because we'd all know it wouldn't happen, that we want everybody in Newtown Township to own electric cars. And we want that done by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it might be a goal that we have, but it's probably not really realistic, right? But you might say that might be what you're really after, but what you might want to come back and say is that we would present to the board. Our goal is to present to the board an ordinance that would encourage electric car use in the township. Okay, that doesn't mean the board's going to pass it, right? Because remember, your role is advisory. You can't control. I mean, I'm very careful with my goals with the board, right?
Sure.
Because when the board asks me to put my goals together for the year, I always write them in such a way that it's what I deliver to them, not what they do with it. Because, I can't control what they do with it. I can only control what I bring to them.
Sure.
And so, not that I don't want other things accomplished, or not that I don't want to do certain things. It's that there's some things that I can't, that's out of my control. There are some things that are out of your control. And so your goal, if you're thinking about it being measurable, might be just the measurement might be delivering it to the board for further consideration.
Right.
May not be whether or not it actually happens, if that makes sense.
I didn't want to get in a position where we say we will provide 12 advices to the board,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we'd be making up advice.
Yeah, no, and that's why I'm saying, I think it might be on the things that you think, and maybe it goes back to, we're going to have one community event. We're going to make sure that we're represented at any, if the township has 4 community events in this year,
Sure.
we're going to make sure we're represented, and we're going to have a table set up if we're allowed to. And if we're not allowed to, then obviously you're not going to do it,
Sure.
right? But if having a table at the music fest that the Parks and Rec is doing is not an issue, and everybody says that's great, and you go set up a table and do that, that's wonderful, to
Right.
put out words about ways for, encouraging that. If you decide that you're going to put in, and I'm making this up too, another rain garden as another sample,
Sure.
and this time you want to do it in an individual's yard, and maybe it's in one of your own yards that
Sure.
you're going to do as a sample to do so that somebody can see in their home, in a in a residential setting versus in our setting. I'm just throwing some ideas out
Uh-huh.
that would be a little bit more specific
Right,
than just a general statement, we want community engagement,
right.
if that makes sense. How are you going to do that? And we're going to engage the community by being as visible as possible. And, we're going to show up at 4 of the farmers market events. Thank
Table
you.
events.
Farmer market table events,
Right.
and we'll be there, for the purpose of doing that, or we're going to work, I'm just coming up with some thoughts that I'm throwing out. And those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about. And I don't want you to walk away with 20 of those.
Right.
I want you to walk away with 3, 4, 5 really specific things. And if there are things that require the township's commitment from a staff perspective,
Right.
the rain garden was a great project,
Uh-huh.
but there was a certain amount of staff involvement that had to be done with that.
Sure.
There was some involvement across the way with, what the staff had to be involved in. Those things are the things that are important to me to understand early on in the year so that we can manage to that we're providing the right amount of staff for what's happening,
Sure.
and we're trying to do more on our own as staff and
Mhm.
accomplish more things,
Sure.
but we want to make sure that what you all are trying to accomplish, that I don't give an expectation to George to do one thing and find out that, you all have a certain project that we really do want to support.
Right.
And so we're going to come support it, but that means there's 3 things over here that I know aren't going to get done. I just need to have the expectation that's fair for my team to
Right.
be able to do that, if that makes sense.
Well, what it does for you too is sometimes 2 different events are selected on the same window or same weekend. And I know that taxes Public Works.
And, we're going to do what we can,
Uh-huh.
but it might mean that I can't give you exactly what you want
Uh-huh.
as your organization. If I've also got parks doing, for example, the concert in the park,
Right.
if there's something big else that's happening, sometimes that's challenging. And, last year, I think we had one day where the guys literally went from one thing to another thing all day
Mhm.
long.
Right.
And, it might be good use of taxpayer dollars in that they're busy all day,
Uh-huh.
but it's probably not the best use of the team because they're just exhausted then afterwards.
Of course, I think Janet and I and Dave, when we had our subcommittee, we talked about our community engagement and community outreach. And we did have a specific goal of, let's say, each month, a member, select a topic and we promote it either through the township Facebook page. And we basically don't have to reinvent the wheel, but use Penn State Extension, their content, and just share that. So whichever environment and maybe discussion item is really important, let's say something like the spotted lantern buys,
Sure.
that was a particular month that would be helpful. So we thought if we could each take a turn, Janet, anything else when we talked about that?
Yes, well, a lot about the sustainability efforts here. And I know that community outreach is one of those topics. I'm really becoming passionate about recycling as much possible of all the stuff that we use, because there's still a lot that's being thrown into the trash. And I think that an educational campaign on composting, on using organizations like Planet Aid to collect fabrics. So many fabrics are going into landfills that don't have to. Here's a statistics on composting. This would be available that we could print this in our magazine because they do give us permission. And 60 to 95% of soil compost can filter out 60 to 90% of urban stormwater pollutants. Now that's a dramatic figure there.
Yep.
And I think if we begin to educate our population on the importance of composting and give them alternatives for doing that, that I want to roll here, that media has already started that. They've done research on it. That research is available to us. It's on there online so that we could choose that. Or if we don't do it as a community, that we publish where they could contact, like Mother Compost or also TerraCycle Home. So I think this is the kind of information that we would get out to the public, and it would satisfy one of those
If we could tie
sustainability
back then to
projects.
if we want a specific goal, we could say that maybe would the EAC do 2 times a month, that we would provide content that the township could put on their Facebook page to share that in the community, in addition to the other things, you know, in the public outreach section. So I think that's what
Yeah,
Steve is
I'm looking for a
for.
number. I think
Yeah.
that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
he's looking for us to break it down, that what we will be doing and how we can, you know, execute that.
If I might just say one more thing, the Delaware Sustainability Committee that they're just forming for Delaware County, they have a goal of modernizing the solid waste plan and identifying ways to reduce, reuse, repair, compost, and recycle the county's discards over the next 10 years. I think we need to begin sooner than that. That's waiting too long to put some of these practices into our community.
I would just make mention, because you mentioned the fabric.
Yes.
Retriever that's on our website as a recycling, they will take. Like, that's how I do all of them. When I get done my jeans, they're usually so worn, nobody else wants them, although they're really in style these days, but it's
That's true.
not in style for how I wear them, but usually they're pretty threadbare, but they take those and they recycle those. And so just so you know that is a place right now that's available in the township, through the township, that people can do.
I read that,
Yeah.
but I got the feeling that it's usable, wearable.
Not
stuff.
necessarily.
How about old towels? that are
Yeah,
ripped?
my understanding is they have actually people that take the thread from that and
Uh-huh.
recycle the thread.
Wow.
Good. So I'm trying to figure out where the pots that are my plants come in, I can recycle. Lowe's only takes their own.
Yeah.
So-
I bring it back to
Yeah, the plastic.
I bring them back to the Amish nurseries that I buy my plants from, and they reuse them, and it's a great way to help the Amish community out, and
So that's the kind of thing. So we need to know that,
Right.
so that people are not, if they have a commitment, but they don't have the time to research it, that we can give them that information.
Sure.
And they don't know what to do. You talk to
Yes.
any family, they're into sustainability,
Right.
but how? I mean, what actions do they take? Ideally, maybe a rain garden or composting.
Native plants with very long roots.
Yeah.
lawn conversion.
So it sounds like the vehicle for communicating this stuff is the newsletter, the
Right.
Facebook page, and leave something on our website.
And also table events.
Hey, yeah,
So if we say we'll make to a certain number of table events per year,
sure.
that gives you a specific goal, the concert. And actually, you know, Parks and Rec will be doing the summer series. We're doing a fitness in the park series. It won't necessarily be yoga this year. It'll be every week will be a different type of fitness. I have Alex Young from Young Forever Young Fitness. We'll be doing maybe like a boot camp or all that. So that'll be Tuesday evenings from 6:15 to 7:15. So there's opportunities if we
That's
want to,
great.
you know, have some of those community events.
Mhm.
Concert May 12th, what else is, Peter's trying to do the disc golf. There'll be a fall concert, so there's some great opportunities for us to take advantage of.
May 12th?
Yeah. Yes. But to Steve's point about the land development, who is our committee liaison for land development?
Actually, Sheila, I thought it was you.
No, I'm Parks and Rec. I'm Parks and Rec.
Wasn't it open space promotion? Weren't you?
I'm open space, but I'm saying in land development of he's talking about any specific plans. being presented to
Planning
this.
commission?
Yeah.
I signed up for planning commission.
You're
Oh,
planning,
okay.
right?
So
who-
That's a good question, is what would be the mechanism for making sure that we get those land development plans?
Yeah,
I
so-
know there have been improvements, but that would be critical if we're gonna have a goal linked to that.
Yep, nope, and that's, you know, we do now have a step that's happens because we've got, you know, you all are going to be reviewing the plans, the Shade Trees Commission is going to be reviewing the plans, the Trails and Greenways Group is going to be reviewing the plans. So there's a lot of different groups that are reviewing that, and so there's a step as when the plans come in. We just haven't had any plans this year, although I think one just came in this week that we'll be getting out to everybody. But that's the plan.
That's great, because what I've seen in the past is we find out about something the day before,
Yeah,
and it's too late to make a,
yeah,
you know, a detailed recommendation.
sure.
But this is great.
So Steve, that's good to know. When a plan comes, like you said, you just got one. Again, what's the mechanism? Like, is someone from the township going to email it to everybody? On the, will we get-
I would have to check with whether we're emailing it to just the chair to get, and they're sending it out, or whether it's going out to everybody. But we'll find that out.
Challenge is some of those development plans are huge, right? They're
Yeah.
Yes, so what I'm wondering is, would it be better to like post them somewhere on a Dropbox or something and give us a link, because some of them are huge? And then the other thing is, that's good to like proactively send it out. But like you said, there can be weeks and months when nothing happens, and you don't know if you haven't heard anything because there hasn't been anything, or because you missed the email. So I'm just wondering if there could be like a backup way of like, there's like a website or a page or somewhere where there's like any active land development plan, we could see, is there something in the works? And maybe that's already posted or available somewhere.
So I'd like to ask if any developer, do they have to look at what is advised in the township, or what kind of plantings they have to do? And they could submit that they have reviewed that and they feel like their project fits those goals. Because if they don't know in advance what kinds of plantings and riparian buffers and all,
So
it is listed?
So for
Okay.
trees, it's very clear.
Okay.
Okay. And that is being reviewed by the township arborist with the Shade Tree Commission.
Right.
So, from that point, and I think the key is, making sure that each group focuses on what each group needs to focus on.
Right.
Because if not, we're going to get potentially conflicting direction from the different advisory groups,
Sure.
right? And that happens sometimes anyhow. Delaware County reviews the plan and they come up with one thing, and the Planning Commission says something different. My goal would be that you would have a recommendation before the Planning Commission. That's not always going to happen. So I know it won't happen this month.
sure.
And so, but it should be before the board, because that's ultimately who you're advising. You're not really advising the Planning Commission, you're advising the board. But it would be helpful if you're at least aware, if whatever you can give back in that way. But we'll look at making sure that it's clear, that it's out, who it goes to, and then and do
Well,
that.
Harry is our planning commission liaison from the township. Harry, you picked that last month? Harry?
Yeah, we did.
I'm sorry,
You picked
Oh,
last month to be the liaison for the planning commission?
I thought I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you're at the meeting, you'll know about it and
Yeah.
be our point person, so we're on top of it.
Yeah.
Folks, I don't mean to be the cold water guy here, and I certainly don't mean to be. And there may be plans that we can have something to add. I was on the planning commission for 20 years in another township. It's a very intense process. It involves working with the solicitor and the township engineer to come up with comments. And frequently the developer, the applicant will go back and revise their plans in accordance with the comments. And there are all sorts of extensions of time and so forth that kabuki dance to have to go through, because the municipality planning code is very technical in terms of what has to be done by when, and the courts are very technical about what the consequences are of not doing it by a certain date unless you've got an extension from the applicant. It's hard stuff. And I don't mean to be difficult, but I'm not sure as a practical matter, one, that we have too much to bring to most of the plans that come before the planning commission. And two, that we could get our act together when the timeframes necessary. We've just been lectured at this excellent program that was done on the fact that we really can't discuss what comments we might make other than in an open meeting. We only meet once a month. I'm just suggesting to you that if there's a desire to get knee deep into this subdivision and other planning activities that come before the planning commission by this body, it's not easy, and it's I think in most cases well outside our expertise.
I feel that same way.
I'm sorry. I mean, that's just my view. I mean, Bruce, we looked at the plan dealing with the improvements to the entranceway to Episcopal Academy, and you know, there's 98% of it are engineering issues, and there's certainly things for an engineer to spot. We would never have spotted any of them.
Yep. Yeah.
So I guess this is one of several topics where I think we maybe wasted a little time this evening on something that is a practical matter. Now, look, sure, we didn't like the hotel. I don't know what happened to the hotel, but it seemed to jeopardize a streamway, and there seemed to be a couple other stupid ideas on that hotel. But the fact is, if the applicant comes within the terms of the subdivision and land development ordinance, they're entitled to their approvals, whether we think it's a good plan or not. Frankly, and some of the stuff that was built on the Ellis tract, there was a lot of elastic in the process because the zoning for the district of the Ellis tract had a lot of elastic in it. And maybe that was one where conceivably we could have had a little bit more input. It's too late now. But all I'm saying is it's highly technical, and it's not, in the main, something that I think the people here would bring too much to. I don't want to be, I'm sorry.
If I can respond to that, I agree with you on some things and not others. It is a very technical process. It is very deep. A lot of people here, and myself included, don't have a lot of engineering background, and there's a lot that's way beyond us. That said, the EAC has submitted on a number of occasions comment letters to the Planning Commission, to the Board of Commissioners, mostly that I researched and wrote and circulated to you all for your review. And it takes a lot of effort on my part, a lot of research. It really stretches me. I try not to go beyond what I'm knowledgeable in, but I've been told on several occasions by Steve and by Leonard that the board really values those. The board wants them. They do not want those to stop. Now that said, there are plans that come before, you know, whoever, that we have nothing to add. I mean, I looked at the thing about Episcopal. It wasn't that complicated of a plan. You know, I wasn't thrilled about it, but it wasn't awful. I didn't see much to add or to complain about. So there, I didn't see that we could add value, but we have specifically been asked by the person who is the current chair of the Board of Supervisors to continue providing comment letters. And I think it's even in our charter from the state that that's something we're supposed to do. And I think that's a function that the EAC can do and should do. Now, that said, you raise a good point about after we were lectured, advised, informed about the restraints on us collaborating, having conversation outside this meeting. You raise a good point, like how would we do that? Because the typical process in the past has been, one of us, me, would draft a comment letter, circulate it to the other members via email. They would review it privately and send their comments back via email, which was logistically an effective way of doing it. And time-wise, that was an effective way of doing it. But I don't know if we're still allowed to do that.
Yeah, I think that, in coming up with the document itself is probably the hardest part, going through the process. You don't have to create the document sitting in this room. I want to be clear. I mean, 90% of what the board votes on and makes decisions on comes to the board for review, and they do that. They make their comment in the public, and it's handled in the public, and that becomes important. What I might say is that if a group of 2 or 3 of you were to put it together, then it would come back before this group for full discussion and then go forward. That's allowable, and do that. So just, like to throw an idea out, we have a plan that I know came in, I believe it was the end of last week, that it's going to be on the 31st. I think it's March 31st is when the Planning Commission is going to hear it. Obviously, you won't have time to put all that together between now and then. But you will meet in the beginning of April before the board meets, and that's ultimately who you're advising. And so my recommendation would be that, 2 or 3 of you kind of review the plan. All of you have a chance to look at it, but then at your first meeting in April, and I apologize, I don't recall the date right off the top of my head.
I think like the 5th.
Is it the 6th?
I think the 5th or the 6th, because Easter is the 4th.
Yeah, I was thinking it was actually it's the 4th. So April 4th, when you meet, you could finalize something as a group, just everybody having read it beforehand. But that means that everybody has to read it beforehand, come prepared, make recommendations. You walk away and say, this is what we're going to recommend back to the board on that. Some of them may be, EAC has no comment on this project. We don't have a feeling one way or another about it. We don't think it adds anything to the environment, or we don't think it takes anything away from the environment. I don't know what the exact way you would word that, but you're right, Cindy. There are projects that you come back to and you look at and you're going to probably say, we have no comment, and that's okay. But if you take another project that you might look at, and you've had several that you've done a really nice job of giving some feedback to the board to think about in the process, and for the developer to think about. That's important. And, and if we're going to make sure that we make changes in our community that we're wanting, and look, not every time does what the Planning Commission go back to the board get approved just as the Planning Commission sent it back. So, there'll be some times that the board will listen and take what's being said and they'll act on it and they'll carry it through. Other times they may not. That's the challenge with being advisory, right? There are times that you want to have everything you say get taken care of and be done a certain way. And, and there's times it just doesn't happen. And that's why they're the elected 5. And the rest of us, we serve a purpose and we do that. And, but I do think, going back to your statement, I do think you could do it by a group of 2, potentially 3, because of the size of this group, and be ready to have a discussion at the meeting. but that means that everybody would have to, you can take that and share it. That's the document that we're recommending. Everybody takes a look at it and then full discussion happens here. You vote on it here. What you can't do is pass it around, make all your changes as a group and make the decision not being together in this location. That's where you have to, that's where it has to be done in public.
Could people send their comments back to me before the meeting in separately, so I can at least review them and think about them, and then we come here and have the discussion and vote?
Yeah.
Or is that getting too close to the edge?
As long as the deliberation isn't happening between you and the person, and you know, if somebody looks at it and says, here are my 6 comments, and you want to put together basically a document that says, here was the document that I put out. Here are the responses that we got. And we're going to share that publicly, and then we're going to discuss it publicly. I think you're fine. If you come back and you go back and forth with one another and just 2 of you, and you, unless it's the 2 of you who are designing the document to be presented to the group, but if you're, you know, once you get that document, you're going around with everybody else and you're doing it, then you're doing deliberations behind the scene, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? You know, the goal is to be transparent, you know, and that's what we want to do. We've worked really hard at that, you know, for quite a while, even before I got here, but we've worked really hard at making sure that everything we do is transparent to the public. And, you know, and that's the key. And that's what we have to make sure that we're doing.
Going to close on my, you know, follow up on Harry.
Yep.
We can't tell a developer, hey, it'd be nice if you put rain gardens in front of every building you build. Developers take their design to the edge of the code. They go as far as they can. They have a profit motive, and rain gardens cost money. And that may not be part of the, you know, part of the design. Where we can make a difference is maybe in the code, making suggestions in how the code could be changed.
Right.
And secondly, participating in the, when a developer wants relief, that's kind of a give and take. And we could advise on that negotiation. You should consider asking the developer for this if he wants that from us.
Yeah. And look, it never hurts to ask a developer to do something. Like if you look at a plan and say, it would be ideal to have a rain garden in this location. We really would like to suggest it, even though our code doesn't require it. We can ask, you know, I mean, just understand that it's not impossible for us to make the ask. We just can't hold it over their head and say, if you don't do this, we're not going to do that. That's how people end up in jail. And so, you know, I love my job and I like the township a lot, but I'm not willing to end up in jail for, you know, that kind of thing. So we're going to stay within the law, and we can say to the developer, you know, the EAC would recommend you do this. There's nothing in our code that requires it. We would recommend that you do it. We think it would make a better project.
Sure.
And there are some developers that are going to do that. We have some people that are really focused on sustainability. You know, I have to tell you, you know, there were some suggestions made, I think, that came out of this group for another project. One of the developers heard about it and they applied it to their project. So, you know, it's not that it can't happen. It's not that it doesn't have, I mean, I ultimately think it should be in our code.
Sure.
Because if it was in our code, then we solved part of the problem. But it's, you know, we can't have our code so restricted either that people can't do. So anyway, I go on and on, but we don't need, and you don't need me to. So.
Well, one great thing to do about code is, I'm a dual citizen in Ireland. You can't build a new house unless it's solar or sustainable. So it'd be great for us to just have all new buildings be 100% sustainable, or, you know, solar or wind or something. And that would stop any new buildings from going in. So there you go. That was shut down planning.
It's a hard concept to sell.
I know.
Let me, first of all, these meetings don't have to last to 6:30, but they shouldn't last much longer, and we're at 6:35. I think we picked a number of items to discuss next meeting. The 3 are indicated here, and I have, which is trash collection. What Joe and I wanted to do is make a presentation as it would be made to the board and get your input and see if we should go forward with that presentation. So we'll do that. Formalize our list of our goals for 2020. We could do some 22. We could do some of that between now and the next meeting. I'll put an outline together that everybody can comment on. And then we're maybe put it in a position where we can vote on those goals at our next meeting as well. Finally, we probably covered this, but we could summarize it in terms of the committees and how we're going to provide advice to those 3 committees, or to the committees. And the other 3 items I have, we're going to discuss grants. We're going to discuss the concept of associate member, or whatever they're called. And we talked about lawn conservation as an idea.
Lawn conversion.
Conversion, I mean.
And Londonderry specifically and what they've done. So we can, and that was just a summation of what was discussed at the watershed forestry program.
Okay.
But I thought their program was exciting and really would be something that the township here would really benefit from. And we can talk about that.
Okay. Do you think you'll be in a position to lead that discussion?
I can, and I will try to see if I can reach out to the Londonderry MSF4 specialist to see if she can give any, participation in our meeting. I will ask, and hopefully she does.
Mhm.
But I think that would be excellent.
Maybe
Because
if you offered them an associate membership, they would.
she's in Londonderry, Pennsylvania. We don't need her to be an associate member. We only need, that would only go up to.
There was an excellent article, that I will find and send to Sheila, but in the New York Times on converting lawns to gravel gardens.
Oh, yeah. I saw
saw
that.
that.
And it was beautifully done, and one of them is in Swarthmore. And it just looks spectacular. I mean, it's a rain garden idea.
Mhm.
I would make note that you have quite a few things that you want to
Yeah, I
cover.
hear you.
And so Bruce, my suggestion would be, and not that you have to put it on the agenda, but that you think about how long you want to spend on each item at that
Sure.
meeting.
Mhm.
And that you make sure that you communicate that to your committee members who are going to be presenting different pieces.
Uh-huh.
And understand you have to allow time for conversation and
Sure.
public comment and all
Mhm.
of those kind of things.
Sure.
And so just something that I might suggest to, because you could easily be 7 o'clock next meeting with what
Exactly.
you have on this
Yeah.
list.
Unfortunately, the water authority follows us next, right? Or municipal.
Actually, they don't. I've moved them
Okay.
for another reason.
Darn, because that was our excuse to end at 6:30.
But I would still aim for that because, from a staff side, from a people attending side,
Sure.
it's helpful to know about how long things are going to be.
Okay.
Well, and the other agenda item might be this land development plan that you
Yeah,
said is
I think
coming
that will
down the
probably
way.
be on your agenda the next one.
And we can actually push lawn conversion back to the following month if you have a full agenda.
Okay. That's probably a good idea.
Okay, I will reach out to that person to see if they can be available for our May meeting.
One more thing on agenda items. I typically ask people to provide me some input as to what they want to discuss. I don't ask soon enough. We want to try to work on the agenda, to finalize the agenda earlier, so I'm going to ask earlier for suggestions. The other thing that happens is the agenda is done, and then I get some suggestions, and it's very hard for me to kind of retrofit the agenda at that point, but I'll put a kind of a timeline together. I know that you're wanting the agenda like
So-
the week before the meeting.
So we need the agenda items the Wednesday prior to your meeting.
Okay,
Am I saying that right? Yeah, we need the agenda items the Wednesday prior to the meeting. Because we meet at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning as staff
Mhm.
to review all the agendas for the next week. And during that meeting, if there's something that we need to add to the agenda, it
Mhm.
gets added at that time. If there's something we need clarification on, we do it at that time. That gives Thursday for whichever staff member is responsible for your committee to finalize that agenda, because we publish all of them on Friday for the next week.
Sure.
And so because you're Monday, it's a relatively close period of time.
Yeah.
But we do the same process for those on Thursday.
Okay.
So, if you have a Thursday meeting, you're still providing it to us the Wednesday, the week before.
Okay.
Okay?
And what really helps for us is the distribution Steve makes of the final
Yeah.
minutes, on the Friday. That's very nice. So any other comments before we wrap up this meeting?
I would just make note, we don't have any public here tonight.
Yeah.
But when we get to the public comment piece, we need to call for public comment.
Okay.
Even
All
though
right.
we don't have any public here, in case we had any emails that came in or anything, we would need to present
Okay.
those. Okay?
Well, I'll just make note, there was no public comment tonight.
Yeah, there was no public comment.
Okay. And with that said, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.